Hello and welcome to the Hoop Collective podcast. We talk about the NBA, which we're doing on Wednesday evening. Joining me from upstairs in my house.
Ooh.
How was this allowed? Tim Bontemps.
So the interesting thing about this is today you and I are in the same place, and I believe the next time we do a pod, Man and I are going to be doing it from the same place next week in Northern California.
I didn't know that.
Fun fact for the listeners.
Yeah, you were actually invited, but you declined his invitation. Go on.
The next time we do a pod?
Not the next time. He's bad at math. Go on.
Okay.
Yeah, the next time we do a pod, next Monday.
You're terrible at math. Let's move.
You're wrong. You're at least a week off.
Oh yeah, that's right. I am a week off. My brain is out.
Joining us from Dallas, Texas. We're all back in the continental USA.
Yeah.
Actually, we're all in the central time zone except for Jackson.
It's true.
It's Bam MacMahon.
Howdy, partners. Hey, is that Lake House still on? Because aren't you in Omaha? Because K-Bon spent so much time with you in Europe that she kicked you out? You had to go off a Windy and stay in his upstairs bedroom?
No.
That's what I heard.
No. We're out here for some gallivanting around the Midwest on the next couple of days.
Yeah.
Oh, you're visiting the neighbor, eh?
All right. That's an inside joke. All right. So we're in the dead of the off season here, and I think we take a look at some NBA teams and sort of where they are relative to where they need to be. And the stock market's been going great the last few weeks, right, MacMahon?
The vast majority of it.
I wouldn't say that, but
it's rebounded quite well. I mean, I know there was some discussion about the next Great Depression, but I think it's done just fine since then.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we're going to have a little stock market game here, and one thing, when I talk to some NBA executives, when they evaluate teams, not all of them, but certainly a couple that I've talked to, they say a team is either rising or falling. It may look like a team is staying static, but you got to make a hard decision on whether your organization is rising or falling. Sometimes you have to make a choice, except if you're the Chicago Bulls, and you have to say, hey, we're doing this or this, and so that's what we're going to do here. We're going to look at some organizations and we're going to say, buy or sell. You're either believe in this team is going up or this team is going down. None of this middle, like, well, they could be okay. We'll see. This is a good exercise the teams should do for themselves, and we're going to do it for them. So there's a few teams we're going to talk about, and I thought we'd talk about a very interesting one right out of the gates, the Denver Nuggets. Tim Bontemps, you may go first. You have the Denver Nuggets stock. Would you be buying or selling right now?
I'm selling. I haven't liked the moves Denver's made the last couple of years. Calvin Booth, the GM of the team, certainly is a strong believer in the young talent he has drafted. That young talent had better come through, because the way they have managed the roster, they've pretty much told Mike Malone through their actions, as we know, what we like to say in the pod, actions over words. Back in the spring, after they lost in Game 7 in the second round of the Wolves and blew a 20-point lead at home, Josh Kroenke and Calvin Booth and Michael Malone sat up there on a dais in Denver and declared that they were going to be able to spend money, and that, yes, the CBA was an issue, but the team was, got Nikola Jokic, we're trying to be competitive going forward, et cetera, et cetera. And then they allowed Kentavious Caldwell-Pope to walk in free agency. Basically only added Russell Westbrook, who I do not like the fit of on a team that already shot less threes than any team in the league, and then lost one of their few good shooters this summer. We talked a lot about Jamal Murray's play this summer with Canada, and in the playoffs when he did not look great. By the way, still has not extended yet, just to remind people of that. He
put some stuff on social media. He's back in Denver working out.
So. I mean, we'll see if he puts his name on a piece of paper, but Yeah, I mean, look, they still got Nikola Jokic. We saw in the Serbia-US game that Jokic is still, I would say, the best player on the planet. If you know, and if you have him, it's going to give you a baseline to go forward. But a team that, Calvin Booth has talked a lot about trying to build a team that's got a chance to win multiple titles and be good for a really long time. I would sell on the direction they're going in right now, and I wonder if their best days as a contender are already behind them.
Yeah, I'm selling. When you have Joker, you've got a chance. I think they'll still be a good team this year. I think their championship odds have significantly decreased. We all know KCP stands for Keep Championship Players. They didn't take that simple advice. Had that work out for the Lakers. I have significant concerns about what we've seen from Jamal Murray going back to really the beginning of the playoffs. Aaron Gordon's going to have to get paid next year. What are you going to do there? Hey, who's guarding Luka or Steph or Shea or John Morant or Devin Booker or on down the list? I don't know. They have not maximized their chances of winning another championship with Joker.
So I really would love to say bye here, basically as a comment on Jokic, because it's hard to not believe in him, frankly. But I'd like to say it just to make a better discussion. I just can't say it. And the rules are you got to say buy or sell. And if you don't feel good about buying, how can you say it?
Well, the fact we're even having the discussion is only because of Jokic, right? I mean, that's where the Jokic factor comes in. Like, you look at the overall direction, you would say if it wasn't for him, you'd have huge questions. Instead, it's just, well, is it not going to be enough because he's really awesome?
So I want to go back to an interview that Calvin Booth did with The Ringer before last season. It ended up being a controversial interview because Calvin Booth claimed that he should have been off the record. I don't care about that. I wasn't involved in that discussion. I just know what was in the story.
Yeah.
And it was maybe one of the greatest interviews I've ever seen a general manager give. And I'm serious. And I'm not even joking. Like, it was terrific interview. And there was so many things that Calvin Booth was quoted as saying in there that I thought were absolutely right on the nose. And one of the things he said, in fact, I believe it was the lead quote in the story. He was saying it was going to be very hard to repeat because their guys were low on energy after the title, which turned out to be true. But here's the quote. If everything is optimized, we should win 3 or 4, meaning championships. I happened to agree with that statement. But it's easy to focus on the second half of it, which is we should win 3 or 4. The first part of the sentence is what I want to talk about. If everything is optimized. Well, that's the hard part. The hard part's building the team. Well, they did that.
Yeah.
He and Tim Connolly built the team. They got the franchise players. They put them together. They got the coach that can inspire them. They did it. Climbed the mountain. But the optimization part, it's hard for every team, by the way. It's not just Denver, but it's hard for every team. And Denver's margin of error, because their ownerships, they're just a little bit tighter with the purse strings than elsewhere. And everything optimizing there is harder. And a year on from that quote, I would not say they've optimized it.
No.
I would say that I wouldn't say they've minimized it, but they have not optimized it. And so I will use their own viewpoint of it to evaluate them. And because they're not optimized, it's hard for me to buy. But I hand it over with regret because of how much I believe in Jokic, like I said.
Yeah, and listen, like the whole second apron, blah, blah, blah. Nobody, like, it's boring. I understand. You have to consider these things. Dude, the thing that they did that I will never, ever, ever understand is gave Zeke Naji an $8 million a year extension. Like, what was the risk of
I
letting?
understand that, and you're absolutely correct. But the salary cap was what, 140
Well,
million.
no. You can't do that because, again, to Tim's point, if they're going to make all these cost-cutting moves all over the place, which they have, right? And they can't do anything with Zeke Najee's contract because nobody's really interested in having him. Like, if that $9 million wasn't on the books, perhaps they still have Kentavious Caldwell-Pope on the team.
And I understand that.
Caldwell Pope was willing to take $8 million less a year. He'd be there now.
I understand that, but it's 5 or 7% of the cap.
Okay.
Not every team is going to make a mistake.
But this is the thing though. In the new system, you can hardly miss on any contract at all, especially if you're gonna have an ownership group that is gonna be very tight on this kind of stuff. You can't make mistakes.
Again, that's lack of optimization.
Yeah, and it's the difference in keeping together the league's most productive starting five or letting a critical piece of that go.
And the second apron, the whole question about the second apron really is not that complicated for teams, really. Because the question is, if you're good enough, are you good enough to win a title, right? If you're good enough to win a title, that's when you do that. That's when you push the chips in. That's when you spend the money. If you're not sure if you're good enough to win a title, okay, then maybe you take a step back and you say, all right, we're going to mind our P's and Q's for now and wait and get into it later. But Denver, there was no question about whether Denver was good enough to win last year or not. If they hadn't blown the 20-point lead in Game 7, they matched up great with Boston. If they win that game, they very well go on to win the title, right? And then we're talking about a team that's won 2 titles in a row. They probably keep KCP then. Everything looks a lot different. Obviously, they blew that lead. They don't win the title. They don't keep KCP. Now we are where they are. But the idea that there should have been some debate about whether it was worth paying him $20 million a year, there shouldn't have been no debate. He should be on the team. But he's not, and they're materially worse because of it.
All right, next team, Milwaukee Bucks. MacMahon, buy or sell?
Similar conversation because Giannis is still a top, 3 player, 4, whatever you want to say. But I'm selling. The roster's getting pretty old around him. Brook Lopez getting up in the years, Chris Middleton getting up in the years, and the medical records getting longer. Dame Lillard is not a young man.
You never like hearing that a player had surgery on both ankles.
Yeah, I don't like to hear either or, but certainly not both.
They didn't announce that either, right? I don't even know who reported that. I was overseas. Did they announce that?
No, but I don't think they ever did announce it.
I don't think they did. I don't recall exactly how it came.
Can you ever? I mean, I'm sure there's been many unannounced surgeries over the years. Have you ever heard of a player having 2 unannounced surgeries in the same offseason? I'm sure
that's a tough one.
It's not great.
And I don't know that they're necessarily a deep team. The one thing I'll say is they've got more continuity this year, right? Dame and Giannis at least have a year of working together. Doc Rivers will have a training camp. I do not want to hear from Doc Rivers how hard his job is because number one, you've got a training camp. You still have a perennial first-team All-NBA talent to build around. And hey, if you didn't want to take the job, you had a pretty sweet gig, sitting there getting paid a lot of money to watch and talk about basketball. So if the job was so brutal, you shouldn't have taken it. So I don't want to hear that anymore. But I don't think that I think you have to say that the arrow is pointed down, given that they're not too far off of winning a championship. And I think it's pretty hard to envision them being a championship team this season. And if this season, the odds go down and down and down.
Apologies, I thought you were done.
What if that ever stopped you?
I thought it's a good line. I think this one's easier than Denver. I think it's a hard sell. Denver at least has young players that in theory can grow forward. With Nikola Jokic, they've got Jamal Murray, who should be entering his prime or in his prime. They've got Michael Porter Jr., got Aaron Gordon. They've got some guys that should be able to grow going forward, at least in theory. Christian Brown, some of the young guys that got on the bench. Milwaukee has a bunch of guys in their mid-30s. I mean, Damian Lillard's in his mid-30s as a small guard, not a great combination, usually historically. Mentioned Chris Middleton, still a great player. When he's on the court, he has not been able to be on the court a lot. Brook Lopez is in his mid-30s, is on now an expiring contract. Unclear whether he can maintain the same level. And there's just not a lot of depth there. I mean, Gary Trent might end up being one of the best signings of the summer as a minimum deal. I like him a lot better than Malik Beasley, who was in that job last year. But Bobby Portis, Pat Connaughton, I did like the DeLon Wright signing on the minimum. I didn't mind the Taurean Prince signing on the minimum. But, I don't think these guys are as good as the Knicks. I don't think they're as good as the Sixers. I certainly don't think they're as good as Boston. So, they're probably going to finish 4th or 5th in the East.
They can't beat the Pacers.
They can't. They struggle with the Pacers. I mean, I think they're going to be the 4th or 5th best team in the East. And to MacMahon's point before, every year this arrow's pointing down faster. And I guess you could argue that if you want to try to be positive that, well, if all this money comes off the books, maybe they could get somebody to come play with Giannis going forward. But I mean, they don't have any draft picks to move. It's just a very difficult situation all the way around in Milwaukee. So I think it's a pretty easy sell.
I am going to buy.
Ooh.
I'm going to buy for one reason. The number 3. That is how many playoff games Giannis has played the last 2 years. 3. And so certainly I'm not saying that they are the favorites to win the East. But it's very easy. And by the way, everything you guys said is right. They're old and they're not looking like they're at their best. They're going to be difficult to improve their roster, etc. But it's very easy to poo-poo their seasons when they haven't had their MVP out there when the season's on the line. They've had the misfortune of having their superstar player get injured in the playoffs 2 consecutive years. And, if he was 100% healthy, maybe they don't make, I don't think that they lose to Miami 2 years ago in the first round, but he's played 3 playoff games in 2 years. And even last year, Dame was injured in the playoffs. Now, you can say, well, Dame is a small guard and he's in his 30s. He's probably going to get injured, more and more. You may be right there. But what you guys are saying is that, you're out on the Bucks, and I'm not there yet when they've got a player in his prime who's that good, who hasn't been healthy. So I think a lot of things would have to align for them to make another run back to the finals. But I think you start from the basis that they do have the talent to do it. These other teams that we may talk about, they're at a talent deficit to the top of the league. And, certainly if you look at, Philly and New York, there's a lot more excitement around those teams for sure. But top-end talent.
I mean, this Philly certainly has more top-end talent than Milwaukee. I don't think that's debatable.
A lot of this really does get back to.
Well, look, one of their all-stars had double ankle surgery, but
it's not debatable. Philadelphia clearly has better top-end talent.
A lot of this comes down to, can Dame be one of the most dynamic guards in the league again on a consistent basis? And look, I'm the guy who, when we had our little wins pool draft last year, took the Bucks number 1 because I thought that Dame and Giannis was going to be such a great fit. I still think there's potential that they can be the best 1-2 offensive punch in the league. I just think this team's got a lot of warts, and obviously I'm not.
Bontemps, let me ask you this. Who do you like being healthy at the end? Paul George and Joel Embiid, or Giannis and Dame?
Honestly, the last couple of years, Joel's been healthier than Giannis at the end. He hasn't been healthy, but he's been healthier.
That's true. I guess that's a fair statement. But
and they've got Tyrese Maxey,
that's not really an honest answer
to
that question.
Well, to me, it's a flip of a coin, but that's a different. Yes, they both have injury questions, but if you want to say Paul George and Joel Embiid and Dame and Giannis are similar, that's fine. Tyrese Maxey, to use a Joe Lacob term, is light years ahead of whatever player you want to say is the third player.
That's
on the
fine.
Bucks.
But if you're evaluating the two teams and if you're calculating injuries,
Well, you said top end talent.
Well, top end, yeah.
Yeah. So they have the best big three in the league, in my opinion.
Who would you rather
So
have,
yes,
Giannis or Joel?
I would probably Giannis.
Thank you. Who would you rather have, Dame?
I mean,
or Paul
I think
George?
you can debate Giannis and Joel, honestly.
I think I would take Paul George there just because he can impact the game so much on both ends.
In the playoffs, I would definitely rather have Paul George than Dame. And I would absolutely rather have Tyrese Maxey than anybody else on the Bucks.
Dame's ceiling is higher simply because, look, he can go for 50 or 60 on any given night. But
there's some Dame fans screaming about instantaneously saying Paul George in that.
I understand. I mean, I'm just saying you don't have to scheme defensively to hide Paul George. He's an asset.
My point is, we're not going to talk about the Sixers here, but almost certainly you would say buy on the Sixers, right?
Yes.
Right? Because it's actually not that much of a debate. And I'm just saying that when you look at the Sixers and the Bucks rosters.
Well, there's a couple massive differences there. One is that Tyrese Maxey is in his 5th NBA season and is an ascendant star.
For sure.
The other is that the Sixers have a whole bunch of draft picks and stuff to move in trades to improve their team. The Bucks have none of that. The Bucks have an aging roster with no real ability to improve it.
That's true.
All this isn't to say that, like with Denver, Milwaukee, if you told me Giannis wins MVP this year and the Bucks make a deep run in the playoffs, sure, I could totally see that. Totally possible. But the direction is not in a good place.
At the top of their game, Giannis and Dame is an incredibly formidable duo. Can they get to the top of their game? Well, that's a different conversation. But, that leads me to soft buy. If I can, I guess, if you're dumping their stock, I could probably get it at a good price. So I'll probably buy it. All right. How about a team up in the upper Midwest, just over from them, Minnesota Timberwolves? I'll start here. Now, it would seem like a no-brainer, Minnesota having been to the conference finals last year, and Edwards, an ascendant star. But the reason that they're on this list is because they have an uncertain ownership situation, and they're facing a lot of challenges in the new CBA.
Hold on. Bontemps is the one who got all up in a tizzy when I declared before the conference finals last year that Ant was at a higher level than Jason Tatum. Now, that didn't hold true during the conference finals necessarily, but it's a conversation. Move on.
Yeah, you just wanted to bring up Tatum again.
Those angry little leprechauns were all up on my social media this week.
Yeah.
Somebody's mad at MacMahon all the time. It's just a matter of who on a given day.
Yeah, we weren't going to talk about Boston because they're a buy. Anybody wants to sell, let me know. I'll buy it. Minnesota Timberwolves. I am going to buy.
You set it up. Come on now.
Because of Ant. And they are going to be under some pressure. There's two reasons why I'm buying. Number one, Ant. Number two, Glenn Taylor is 80-something years old and just got $500 million from Mark Lowry and A-Rod. And their difficulty with their payroll should ease a little bit as the cap goes up. They've got these guys under contract. Now, Rudy Gobert has a contract extension situation that can get discussed in the next few weeks. And that's a bigger question, but their players are locked into their contracts and the cap should go up. Where they're kind of squeezed is obviously in trading for any talent, but they were able to manufacture adding bench talent this offseason. I mean, we'll see about those moves. But Bontemps, I think because of Ant and because Glenn Taylor, this could be the only time his best last opportunity. Soft buy, but I'm going to buy.
I like how we started off with this, MacMahon, with Brian declaring you either have to buy or sell.
All right, you're right.
He's now done soft buy twice.
Soft.
You're right.
I want to
It's-
buy
all right, hard buy.
Denver.
Hard buy.
This
you go.
This is as soft as letting a 6-year-old win on video games. Go on.
I am selling
Bontemps
Minnesota.
let my son win at FIFA tonight, and in a shootout. That's what he's referring to. And the pod was late because of it.
I did.
He was nice enough to let a 6-year-old win. Jeez, MacMahon. Well, how will he ever recover?
I'm going to sell on Minnesota. I do love Ant. I have a lot of concerns about the overall state of the Wolves. I mean, a lot of this, I think it's fair to say, comes down to the fact that it's sort of been forgotten about. You mentioned Glenn Taylor. There currently is a outright legal fight over who's going to own the team. It's kind of a significant problem for the long-term direction of a team when the three principal owners are in court with each other. I
have a pretty good idea how that one will end.
I would bet on Glenn Taylor retaining control of the team over time, but it is not a good thing that they are fighting over it. But it's also not a good thing for the long-term situation of the team that Tim Connolly, who had the ability to potentially leave this summer because of the way his contract was set up, basically pushed back that decision on his option for 1 year, which
you can sell the stock in a year after if he leaves.
You can. I'm just saying it's another concern. And from a roster standpoint, like, look, their current starting five is awfully good. I love Mike Conley. You've got Ant, who's an ascended star, has a chance to be the best American player going forward, which isn't necessarily going to be the best player going forward because of a certain Frenchman, among others, but got a chance to be a big-time player in the league. But Rudy is getting older. I'm not convinced about the fit of him and Karl Towns late in the playoffs. We saw Karl have some big moments in the playoffs last year. But this whole conversation looks a lot different if they don't come back from down 20 in Game 7. And then when they did come back from down 20 in Game 7, they got handled pretty good by Dallas in the conference finals. And
by the way, Ant was talking. I forgot to ask him about this, but before the semifinal, Ant was talking to Jokic. And I highly doubt they were talking about whether they had any good restaurants, hit any good restaurants in Paris. When Ant's talking trash. And I would love to know what he said to Jokic. But, he does have a couple on Jokic now. Just want to point that out.
That's true.
There's not that many who can hold chits on Jokic, but Ant holds a couple.
Hold what?
Chits.
How do you spell that?
CHIT.
Oh, holy shit.
You've got Mike Conley in his late 30s who, they traded up for Ron. Again, they made a bold move to trade up for Rob Dillingham in this year's draft. I'm not convinced that is going to ultimately be a great move. And then you've got Naz Reid and Rudy Gobert could both be free agents in a year too. And even if they do come up with a way to keep Rudy, I'm not convinced they're going to be able to keep Rudy and Naz going forward. So there's just a ton of uncertainty here. And so I would sell, especially given how deep the West is. But again, like all these teams, because these teams are all really good, like I'm also not going to sit here and say that there's no way
Bontemps hasn't bought anything yet.
No, the USWB, come on now. I'm buying here. I'm buying here because Ant is an ascending superstar, and I still think there's a lot of meat left on the bone. He's a guy he's the rare superstar who can be coached hard, and I think he's benefited from being coached hard by Chris Finch. I think he's a brilliant musician who's learning how to read sheet music. Like, he doesn't necessarily feel the game. He's a phenomenal athlete, has all kinds of talent. He's learning how to read it.
Beautiful. That was beautiful. Like, now I know why you're a pending author.
Yeah, basketball is jazz. Holger Geschwindner taught me that one.
That was beautifully described. That is a great way to describe
But
it.
it's exactly true though. Jaden McDaniels is an ascending elite role player who fits great with Ant. If those two guys are together, they'll have the best wing defensive tandem in the league. And I think McDaniels has, we've seen some development in him offensively. There's more there.
They weren't guarding him when it mattered.
I know there's more there.
That's something that's it's a thing.
He's really, he's got to become a consistent spot up 3-point shooter. And look, the series against the Mavericks in the Western Conference Finals didn't last long. The Mavericks made quick work of them. It was a competitive, quick series, right? The first
our favorite thing to this competitive.
No, yeah,
sweeps.
But no, it's the first 3 games when the Mavericks go up 3-0. They were trailing in the last 5 minutes of each of those games. But one of the Wolves' biggest warts, I would say the biggest wart for the Wolves, is that they were a very clunky, clutch offensive team. I also think that goes directly into Ant being young, Ant learning on the fly here. I think that's an area because he ain't scared. It's just the execution part of it. I think he can get better there. I'm curious to see if Joe Ingles has any juice left because his playmaking and shooting, and obviously he's got great chemistry.
He did not play for Australia.
I saw that, and that's not a great sign.
Matthew Dellavedova was playing for Australia.
Yeah,
he actually got minutes.
I love Joe, but I don't think there's much left there.
And then the bet on Dillingham, that's a significant bet, obviously. They were depleted in draft capital and gave up what they could to get him. They need him to be a bench bucket getter now and ready to take over for Conley at the end of Conley's contract.
Yeah, it's also a piece that if he has a good start could end up becoming a valuable chit.
Well, it's just hard. It's hard because of how much money they have on the books to really do anything from that standpoint because they can't really aggregate money because they're into the second apron too. It's just like I love Ant. It's not a bet against Ant. It's basically a bet against the infrastructure around Ant. And that's been the at least for these 3 teams we've talked about, that's sort of been the through line for me that you've got 3 of the best players in the league on these teams, but there's just a lot of question marks around all 3 of them.
All right. We'll see if we can find something for Bontemps to buy. How about the New Orleans Pelicans? Bontemps, you can start.
I'm still just kind of confused by the summer that the Pelicans
doesn't sound like a buy, MacMahon.
Well, how am I buying a team that doesn't have a center?
That's my concern.
Yeah.
It seems like they're going to go into the season. They couldn't really get a deal for Brandon Ingram, seems like, in part because of the stupid first apron hard cap in the CBA. When you take in $1 more than you send out in a trade, it's totally botched. It's messed up the trade market.
Yeah, there should really be some sort of wiggle room in there, like $1. Give me a break.
It's a dumb rule that they should change and just have all that stuff hard cap at the second apron, so there'd be a lot more flexibility, at least in this interregnum period where all this contracts from the last few years because of the pandemic are still jamming up everybody's books. But that being said, it seems like right now we're looking at a Pelicans team that's going to go into next season trying to play DeJounte Murray, Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, Brandon Ingram, and Zion Williamson. That I want to buy that lineup because
you're totally disrespecting Daniel Tice.
They have Daniel Tice. They drafted a couple. They have had an interesting second rounder. Got himself a deal in summer league. They drafted Iz Missy in the first round.
They may even be playing Jeremiah Robinson Earl.
Well, my point is, they don't have anybody that you really are expecting is going to play massive minutes for them that you like.
Yeah.
So that lineup is one of the more. They're one of the more intriguing teams for me in the league. Period. Because I really want to see what they are going to do because they have to play small and they have to play Zion at center and I don't know how they're going to get a rebound. I don't know how they're going to get a stop, but they're going to be incredibly fun to watch. But ultimately, I'm going to sell because at the end of the day, I go back to that playing game and I was sitting at home watching Zion play. I was like, man, this guy is doing it. He looks awesome. He's wrecking things out here on the court. And then he grabs his hamstring and then he's done. And you can't, as exciting as the guy is, how can you bet that he's going to, when we talked about the injury stuff with the Bucks and Sixers, how can you bet that this guy is going to be out there when it matters?
Yeah, to me, this comes really down to, I mean, everything that you said about their roster challenges and their positional challenges and the Ingram trade challenge, all of that's true. To me, this comes down to, are you buying or selling on Zion?
Right.
And I'm such a huge believer in his talent. And he played 70 games in the regular season this year. 70. I mean, last year. And he's done so many good things, but God, it's hard to say bye when he can't finish the season. I mean, he just can't finish it.
No.
So I got to say sell, because he's got so much going for him. The other thing is the ownership is not going to spend into the tax. I mean, that's pretty much been established. I'd like to be able to tell you that you can build a great team. And I do think, there was a time 15 years ago where you could win without paying the tax, but for so many different reasons. And especially because they have these legacy contracts that are on the books, Zion's contract, the CJ McCollum contract.
That is the contract that's killing.
It's sitting there for the next 2 years, and they've got to deal with the new rules while having some legacy contracts.
ESPN crime, jeez.
I know, this is the guy who negotiated the contract, CJ McCollum. He knew to get that deal done before they did the CBA. So MacMahon, I'm in sell.
Well, you guys are depressing. You've been infected by Bontemps' constant tinkling. I'm going to inject a little boost of optimism here.
Wow.
Zion as the center, in other words, Zion without Valanciunas, Larry Nance Jr., or Cody Zeller on the floor. So Zion at the 5 last year. Those lineups were plus 6.2 as a net rating. So that would say, maybe that will work. Now, that's in 366 minutes. It's a lot different.
Not nothing.
Not nothing, but I think it's a lot different than when you can kind of pick and choose when to use it and have it as a tool versus have it as, hey, this is our starting and closing lineup. I really wanted them to turn Brandon Ingram into a quality center. Ingram for
it's not over, but
it's not over. Ingram for Jared Allen made sense in my mind. It did not make sense to the Cleveland Cavaliers, and there's still that rule that both teams have to agree to a trade. And then, the one thing with Zion, though, is a younger Brook Lopez, for example, would be great, because what you really need there is a defensive anchor who can kind of space the floor and let him work on the offensive end. So he's such a unique player, such a massive talent, but I think you've got to kind of be careful with fit around him as well. And let's be honest, like him and Ingram, they're not a terrible fit, but they don't enhance each other. And that's
most nights, no. Occasionally, yes, but most nights.
It's also just interesting. It's also just interesting that Zion played 70 games last year, didn't really sniff the All-Star team, didn't come close, making All-NBA. Just interesting. If you'd have said a couple years ago, well, Zion played 70 games, you'd think he'd be in the mix for all that stuff. And it's just he's in a pretty big moment right now. And they clearly have oriented this team to be like, all right, we're going to try to have the best offense in the league, and it's going to be this guy cooking, and that's how we're going to try to win. Because they're certainly not going to stop people with the group they have. So,
well, that's true. I mean, we haven't even mentioned DeJounte Murray. That was one of the big moves of the offseason. I mean, that's what the thing I would say, like, Brandon Ingram, at the worst case scenario, he's a $36 million expiring contract.
Yeah.
You could say, okay, well, maybe there's some restrictions on him in terms of the hard capping, et cetera. But like at the end of the day, he's still a $36 million expiring contract, but they can't really afford to take on money, probably, primarily because they're going to have to pay Trey Murphy. Trey Murphy hasn't extended yet, but at some point he's gonna, and they need to reduce payroll medium term to afford to pay him, because they brought in DeJounte Murray at that number, which is over 30 million next year.
Yeah. And so I'm selling and reserving the right to change my mind depending on if something happens with Ingram.
All right. Dallas
What happened
Mavericks.
injecting optimism? He injected optimism, said all that, and said you're agreeing. Come on now.
But first I gave a little optimism into the conversation.
He didn't really inject it. He sort of was more topical.
Yeah, exactly.
Dallas Mavericks, MacMahon.
Well, I would say that certainly buying a hell of a lot more than I was at this point last year when it felt pretty gloomy and pretty doomy. But these things can always be touch and go. Having said that, Luka, as much as I can tell, is legitimately very, very happy with the situation. There was concern that this summer could be an uh-oh kind of situation with him. Hey, obviously if things had gone like they did last year, it could have gotten dicey. They went to the finals. I fully anticipate that Luka will snatch up what will be another record-breaking contract extension next summer. He's 25 years old, still approaching his prime. And then I think the other biggest reason that you buy here is because that pick that they tanked to keep, they turned that into Derek Lively II, who, like, you could not draw up a big man who is a better complement for Luka in terms of a rim runner, lob finisher, floor runner.
I have two questions about Derek Lively.
Okay.
One, are we going to see Derek Lively, the 3-point shooter, starting this fall?
I mean, he's optimistic about that. I would say, if so, awesome. If not, like, I enjoy ice cream sundaes that don't have a cherry on top.
All right. Here's number two. Consider we just got done with Team USA and we're searching for centers. How about Derek Lively, future Team USA center?
I think he's going to be in that conversation.
He did go to Duke. I don't know if you heard, but Duke sometimes gets guys on Team USA.
Yeah, I don't know if Grant Hill will hold his lack of production at Duke against him, though. But I mean, seriously, he came in the league as a project and made massive strides in the summer before his rookie year and was much more ready than anybody anticipated, and was a massively impactful player in the playoffs as a rookie who was coming off not just missing the last few weeks of the regular season, but grieving the death of his mother. Brutal. I mean, in terms of like the combination of character, talent, and fit with Derek Lively, I mean, I've said this, and I don't hesitate to say it again. When we talk about the great centers that are going into their second year, there are 3 stops on Interstate 35 we need to talk about: San Antonio, Dallas, and Oklahoma City.
Well, and I'll say, Mr. Holmgren, Mr. Lively, please examine your summers for 27 and 28. You may be required. You may be required to deal with the guy who's in San Antonio, among others. All right, Bontemps. That sounds like a buy.
Yeah, I mean, this is a buy simply because of the presence of Luka and Lively and that combination going forward. I mean, I would be a completely unreserved buy if I thought, or if I knew Klay Thompson was going to be the 6th man this year, which I think is what the optimal role for him will be. I have some concerns. Now, I know he's going to start. I have some concerns about him being in the starting lineup and them having the combination of him, Kyrie, and Luke out there all trying to guard people at once, I think they could end up in a very similar situation to what Golden State did with Clay in that regard, which I think could end up causing some problems if they were starting not Zeke Najee Marshall in that spot instead, and having basically what they did last year, and then having Clay coming in off the bench and flame throwing, playing next to either Luka or Kyrie, which I think might ultimately be what happens. We'll see. I know it's not how it's going to start.
Yep.
I would like that overall fit much better. But yeah, like Luka's got the perfect lob threat to go with him going forward. A guy who has shown, to your point, Brian, who can shoot a little bit, unbelievable character guy, is clearly going to work himself to be as good a player as he can be. And when you talk about, the trajectory of a team, there's no question that duo should be together, assuming Luka sticks around there for a decade.
Yeah.
And that is a great place to start from. And, you can do a lot of stuff with that. So, yeah, I am buying there. And like I said, if at some point during the year, Clay is coming off the bench in a 6-man role, then I'll be completely bought in on Dallas in the short term too. But long term, I think the future is very bright in Dallas. Which, to your point, MacMahon, a year ago, it did not look like this. It's a remarkable turnaround.
Yeah.
How fortunate that Dallas and Golden State were drawn into the same pool for the Emirates NBA Cup. Boy, what a remarkable turn of ping pong balls, or however they draw that without
frozen envelopes.
The thing about Luka is that his flaws are so fixable.
Well, they're also.
What are they, Brian? What are his flaws?
I'm just saying, they're so fixable. He doesn't have holes in his game. His flaws are so fixable. And if he fixes them, there's nothing to stop him. Nothing to stop him.
Hey, we didn't even mention Kyrie, though. And if we're talking long term, he's 32. Now, as he pointed out to me, once he was the last kind of old guard star left standing in the playoffs, he said, "Hey, I see somebody at 39 who's getting better. I feel like I'm just entering my prime."
Well, I'm not sure LeBron's getting better.
I'll stand by what I said. The future is bright for the Mavs because of 2 players.
Yeah. But Kyrie's obviously.
By the way, I love Joel. As a side note, Joel got some grief during the Olympics because there was that interview that he did with the New York Times that came out. He did the interview before the Team USA got together. Then it came out during Team USA. And I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but he basically said that LeBron is not as good as he used to be. And he got asked about it in the Olympics. And Joel's like, you, as in your media, the media needs to do their jobs better. Because that LeBron isn't the same player that he was. And that's true. LeBron is not the same player that he was when he played for the Miami Heat. I honestly think his best season might have been 2017-18. Right.
6 or 7.
Right. He's just MVP of the Olympics.
Yeah.
So he's not better than he's ever been, but he's better than we've ever seen at this age.
Yeah.
That's unquestionably true.
But I just like Joel going, Joel basically is saying I get aggregated is what his and so I just like him saying, you got to do your jobs better. Yes. And it's kind of like LeBron. I remember LeBron, it became a meme when he said, be better tomorrow. I always loved that moment where he said, be better tomorrow. And it wasn't because he was wearing suit shorts. That was a remarkable time in LeBron's, endorsement career. He had this contract with this suit maker. And he gave all of his team the suit, and they kind of felt like they had to, I think they kind of felt like they had to wear it, but really it was just a total ploy for the suit maker. And that, at the time it was suit shorts and with one long sock. One sock was supposed to be kept low. One sock was supposed to be played long or pulled up high to your knee. And they all turned up acting like they were happy to be wearing it. But my God, I mean, it worked when he handed everybody out beats in the 2008 Olympics.
Yes.
Everybody was like, "Oh man, these are cool." Nobody has seen any kind of giant headphones like that, and they, like, this is awesome. Let's wear these. And it didn't work out as well with those suits. But anyway, one of the things I always loved about that moment was that, he's saying be better tomorrow. And the reason is I like is because LeBron was going to talk to the media tomorrow. He talked to the media every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically he was like, whether you agreed with the question or not, he was like, be better tomorrow. And but I like Joel saying be better, because basically he's saying, I got aggregated. You know what I'm saying. I wasn't insulting him. Be better.
Listen,
And,
Wendy likes anybody
like
who goes after aggregators.
Yeah, well,
common ground.
that's right. All right. How about this one? The Miami Heat. I'll start. I'm going to buy.
Oh.
And I probably shouldn't because of the relative strength of the Eastern Conference.
He's trying to make up with Bam.
Bam and I are fine.
We're going to start calling it Heat Corner, MacMahon. Heat Corner, sponsored by Brian's Apology Tour.
Well, I'm not what I have to apologize for. I don't have to apologize for anything.
I'm just saying.
Here's the thing. Jimmy Butler not extending and basically saying, I'll be a free agent in next July. Whether that is true or not, remains to be seen. He's got a $52 million player option for the last year of that deal. And I think he just had a birthday, and I think he turned 30. How old does he turn?
No, his birthday's in September. He'll turn 35.
Okay. Well, I knew he's had a birthday before next season. So he'll be 35. Year. Right. So Jimmy Butler, highly motivated to be a free agent, I think is a different animal. And the Heat have had absolutely miserable health luck the last couple of years. Miserable. I still don't exactly understand the Terry Rozier trade, but I don't know. We'll see. Giving up a first.
Like that trade at the time, but obviously didn't pan out.
Well, he got hurt because everybody in Miami seems to get hurt.
Yeah. But I'm not giving up on Rozier being a nice piece there.
But I'm basically saying because Jimmy Butler is going to, I think, be highly motivated. At times, it seems like Jimmy looks for reasons not to play. And maybe that'll be the prevailing situation. But I believe that Jimmy is going to be in killer mode to try to prove himself to the Heat and whoever else in the league. And I think that leads me to say buy on this one.
If you want to buy the Heat, there's 4 reasons why. Eric Spoelstra, Pat Riley, Bam Adebayo, and South Beach. That's why you're buying the trajectory of the Heat going forward.
Can I get Jaime Jaquez in that mix?
I mean, if you, I'd probably see a little bit more before I'm making him a core part of what you like about them going forward. But yeah, I mean, you're betting on the Heat, Bam, Spo, and the Heat infrastructure, right? If that's the sales pitch. It's a pretty good sales pitch. As of now, though, I'm selling. I don't like the Tyler Hero deal that appears to be stuck on their books for a while. I am not convinced Jimmy is going to be able to get to the level that is required. And, I do think they're a little encumbered for a while. They are encumbered a little bit for a while, draft pick wise, especially after that Rozier deal. So I am going to sell, but we have seen the Heat pull rabbits out of hats before. When they got Jimmy Butler in the first place, they got him for Josh Richardson basically in a straight up trade. Was not exactly a deal that seemed like it was on the cards when the summer started, but Andy Ellsberg's maybe the best cap guy in the league, and Pat Riley and him find ways to get stuff done, and Spo is, in my opinion, the best coach in the league. So, there's reasons for optimism, like always if you're a Heat fan, but at least the current direction, I'm selling.
I mean, if the stock price is an 8 seed that got bounced pretty easily in the first round, I'll buy off of that. I'm not convinced, though, that Jimmy Butler going into a contract year with no kind of commitment either way between him and the franchise is a good thing. I would say that he has.
Well, what might not even, I mean, I think it's not just a message to the Heat, it's a message to the rest of the league too.
Yeah. I have concerns about potential volatility there. I'll just put it like that.
Can't imagine why.
Jimmy's at his best in that situation. And Eric Spoelstra has no problems with being uncomfortable.
Well,
I'll tell you that.
I just, they've had some interesting sideline interactions. It wouldn't shock me if there were a few more of those.
Reading the lips of that famous one with the throwing of the clipboard. I always knew you were crazy.
Yeah, there was another word mixed in there.
Yeah.
Which, hey, that's,
I don't think Jimmy
sometimes
disagreed.
It's good crazy. Sometimes it's
Right.
concerning crazy.
The Memphis Grizzlies. MacMahon?
I mean, you've got to buy off the 27-win season when they were decimated by injuries. This whole thing of everybody's forgotten.
Decimated is not even good enough word. I mean, they went well past decimated.
Not as big a word as I know. But yeah, like this whole thing of, they've forgotten about John Morant. Like, nobody's forgotten what a talent John Morant is. Just, I mean, come on. I don't need to hear all that. Now, can they get back to being a mid-50s win team? Can they get back to being a team that is a threat to make a deep run in the Western Conference? Can they get out of the first round in the Western Conference? I don't think I'm buying that hard. I'm buying that they'll be in the thick of the playoff race. I'm buying that I think they're a top 6 team in the West. And I'll tell you that.
Yeah, we're not saying, when we say buy, we're not saying they're going to win the title. We're just saying they're on their way up.
What's going to be most interesting about the Grizzlies is to see how impactful Zach Edey is and how well he fits. They end up picking him 9. They had a glaring hole at center that he fills. Defensively in the modern NBA, I think there's some pretty significant concerns there. I also think pairing him with Jaren Jackson Jr. can cover up a lot of those concerns. And like I said, I just want to see how impactful he can be right away because they need him to be really good.
They're gonna play him. Right, they're going to play him right away, right?
I think he's going to start immediately.
I would assume he's going to start.
Jaren Jackson Jr. at center, and Brandon Clark's never been a starting center, much less, he did play some within the last year, but
He's not a center, and he's not a full-time center in the NBA.
I mean,
he is a full-time center. He's not a full-time starting center.
That's what I mean, full-time.
Hopefully, he can be back to what he was, which is a very good 20-minute per game bench big.
Yeah. He's your backup 5. You feel pretty good about where you're at. I'm buying Memphis. Obviously, we will see if John Morant can keep himself on the court, but if he can, I expect him to have a big year. He Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. are awfully, awfully good together. We haven't seen them together in a minute. But when they are together, they're as good as a trio as there is in the league. The Edey pick was one of the more fascinating bets the team has made in a long time. It gives Zach Kleiman, the Grizzlies GM, a lot of credit. When he has conviction about a player, he follows through on it. And
I'm not so sure he was their number 1 choice at center, but he was the guy they could get.
I mean, Kleiman claimed that he was, but I hear what you're saying.
I mean, whether it was him or Donovan Clingan, either way, they certainly made a big bet on Edey, drafted him 9. There was a very loud statement of intent for where they were at. And
they drafted for need in a draft that, was shallow maybe on game-changing talent. They drafted for need. Right?
Well, they used a lottery pick. They made a big swing with a lottery pick. Like it's just I'm very interested to see how it plays out. And they did the same thing with Marcus Smart. You paid a heavy price to get Marcus Smart. You know, when he likes a player, paid a heavy price to get Zaire Williams. Didn't work out. Like, you know, ultimately, though, I think I like the direction overall from a talent perspective. Getting Gigi Jackson and Vince Williams as a couple of guys on the wing who could play minutes for them is big. And yeah, like you said, MacMahon, you know, there's been a lot of talk about the playoff picture in the West. And for all these teams that are good, like I think Memphis is clearly a top 6 team if their guys are available and on the court. So maybe they just replace the Clippers up there. But like there's a lot of teams trying to get in the top 6. And I think if Memphis has got their guys, they're one of the 6 best teams in the West at a minimum.
Well, look, I mean, my whole thing on this whole project here has been, what do you think of the top end talent? Do you buy or sell the top end talent? I buy Jimmy Butler in a contract year. I buy, you know, Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Brian's buying everybody, MacMahon.
No, he's a friendly guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair point.
Got that Podfather money. It's just spreading around.
Yeah. Plus he's rich.
John, Bain, and Jackson, you said it already. That's pretty good. Pretty good.
Hey, Bontemps, does Wendy have those like real fancy sheets, like the high thread count type things?
I mean, I haven't slept yet, so I don't know.
No.
Find out.
I didn't give
I'll
him
report back on the next pod.
I didn't give him the good guest room.
I guess as little as Wendy sleeps, thread count's not that important.
I just saw his wing where he when he does his morning TV routine, he has his own wing to get to sleep and get ready in. So
do his makeup.
Yeah.
One more before we go. Cleveland Cavaliers.
And it's now time for Cavs Corner with Brian Windhorst.
Oh, Cavs Corner, baby.
Cavs Corner, baby.
Skibbity Ohio Rizzlers.
Sponsored by the stock market. What are we doing? Buying or selling? I think I know what the Cavs Corner expert is going to do. What's he going to do?
MacMahon, Bontemps is driving very appropriately. He's driving a rental car with Cuyahoga, Ohio county plates.
MacMahon has no idea where Cuyahoga is.
I had Ohio plates during my little family vacation in Massachusetts and Vermont, of all places.
People like to get out of Ohio.
Yes, they sure do. Like they get out.
They rent cars and they get the heck out.
All right, Brian, you buying or selling the Cavs direction?
I'll wait
what are
till
we doing?
the end. I'll wait till the end.
No, you're starting. You launched us in with the Cavs.
MacMahon.
I'm selling because I thought that they needed to change up the core. Listen, getting Donovan Mitchell to sign that extension was a massive win for the Cleveland Cavaliers. And certainly their fans have every right to be excited about that. I don't have a problem with giving Mobley the max extension. You say it over and over and over again. 1-3-1, one ball handler, 3 wing/shooters, 1 big man. And I just still don't believe that Allen and Mobley are a long-term fit with a high enough ceiling to give them a chance to contend, which, if you're buying, what you're saying is you think they can be better than a second-round team because it's what they were last year. And then Garland and Mitchell's just not a great fit either. Too similar, and Garland's essentially a lesser version of Mitchell. So until they do something to change up that core and to get complementary pieces around the 2 guys they're building around, I'm selling.
Bontemps.
I'm selling until I see Evan Mobley become the player the Cavs have paid him to be. If he becomes a guy that is a true two-way force that can play the 4 next to Jared Allen, that can space the floor as a reliable 3-point shooter, that's a guy who's an all-NBA player. You pair him with Donovan Mitchell, that's a team where you're currently at or over the second apron, which is where they're going to be starting next season. Like, like I said earlier, you're going into the second apron because you believe you have a team that's good enough to win a title with all the stuff that comes with it. I don't think the Cavs, as constituted right now, are good enough to win a title. I would not have given Evan Mobley a max today. That said, Evan Mobley, if he develops his offensive game, which if you want to point to the hiring of Kenny Atkinson, long considered one of the best player development coaches in the league, you would say, all right, Kenny Atkinson, your job is to turn Evan Mobley into an all-star and all-NBA forward, not an all-star NBA center. Because if he's a center and they have to trade Jared Allen for stuff, their team's probably going to be worse because centers in the current league are not worth as much as forwards. So the way for the Cavs to optimize their roster and optimize their title chances is for Evan Mobley to become either their best player or at minimum right at the same level with Donovan Mitchell. So I'm selling, and I'm going to be looking at the stock and ready to buy it if I see Evan Mobley starting to make those strides at that end of the court, as opposed to being the guy he's basically been for the first 3 years of his career, which is a really good player, a very good defensive player, and a guy who has moments of impressive play on offense, but otherwise is more of a placeholder there.
Okay, actions and words. Their actions have been that they believe that this team together works because they've extended them all. Their words on the record are that they believe that this grouping can work. And I'm here to tell you their words off the record are that they believe this grouping can work. I remain skeptical that they truly believe that. But I don't truly believe it. And I don't have to truly believe it. Kenny Atkinson has to believe it. Kobe Altman has to believe it. Donovan is enough of a believer to re-sign. Those are powerful people in this. But I don't believe it. I don't believe in this grouping can do better. I believe that it's got to be retrofitted. And yet they doubled down on it hard. And they doubled down on the trade deadline. They stayed doubled down on it over the summer. So I'm very firmly aware that it has been a long time since a Cavs team that doesn't have LeBron James on it has been this good. And I don't flippantly ignore that point, nor do I flippantly ignore that the signing of Donovan Mitchell, I have said, is the second biggest contract signing in the history of the organization after LeBron in 2014. And so it's hard to say sell, but that's what I have to do because I don't believe in that grouping.
Awfully harsh. I'd just like to point out to Cavs fans who might be feeling spurned by fellow Northeast Ohio native Brian Windy Windhorst that he will be in that neck of the woods in mid-September. The old Akron Rubber Ducks, bobblehead night, throwing out a first pitch. Who knows what other appearances he might be making over the weekend. I haven't
committed to throwing out the first pitch yet.
I'm going to ensure that occurs.
Yeah, we're going to make that happen.
If I have to trot your ass out to the mound myself, put the ball in your hands and like push you
trying to
rubber, I'll do it.
Trying to avoid embarrassment.
Well, listen.
You're going to have more embarrassment if you try not to throw out the first pitch. I'll just say it that way.
You'll be fine. You're throwing out the first pitch. Like I said, who knows what other appearances might be in the works for that weekend. But if Cavs fans feel a certain way, you can just come out and yell at Windy yourselves. Maybe warm up your arms and throw some tomatoes at them.
Look, the thing that to get back to the Cavs, the thing that we have seen over the past couple of years is that the thing that wins right now at the highest level in the NBA is versatile size. And the more versatile size you can have, the better. And that's why I think, to your point, Brian, trying to build around two small guards in particular is a difficult thing to do.
Well, they would argue that the size that they have at the back line helps protect the small.
But it doesn't. But it doesn't help you when it gets down to it at the end of the day, deep in the playoffs, because it's target practice still at the other end. And if it's Donovan Mitchell with big wings around him, and then the two bigs, I think that is a situation where you're cooking with gas again if Evan Mobley takes these strides. Because if you're playing, to me, MacMahon shaking his head, he's been leading the charge to have Evan Mobley play center. I get it. I just think if for this team to be like they did something last year they hadn't done in decades without LeBron James. It's a successful season. If they are a good to really good team in the East for the next 4 or 5 years, I don't think that's some sort of a failure of an outcome.
No.
That's good. But I'm talking about from a championship standpoint.
Right. To give them
having
a chance to win a championship.
That's right.
There's got to be some things that change, either internal improvement, especially from Evan Mobley as an offensive player, or I think more likely via transactions. Again, I think Evan Mobley can shift to center and be well worth that contract. Like we were just raving about Derek Lively. Like if Derek Lively's developmental path continues, I think he's going to be a pretty easy fun max decision by the end of his rookie deal. And I don't care if he ever makes another 3-point shot again. He made one last year in the playoffs, in the finals. I don't care if he ever makes another one, just because he can be that impactful as that rim running, make plays out of the short roll, anchor your defense, do all those things. I think Mobley can be that impactful in that role.
He's already been impactful defensively.
Oh, he's phenomenal defensive. There's no question about that. He absolutely can anchor a good defense. I mean, he can be, he can be a defensive player of the year candidate. Offensively with him at the 4, it's just a tough fit in a league that
right now
spacing matters so much. It's just really difficult.
Yeah, right now. That's why their highest end outcome is if that lineup works with him at the 4 and Jared Allen at the 5. They have to find a way.
Well, again, they would argue
that work.
The last 2 years they've been high win total team, home court, first round, second round team. They
just fired their coach.
I was going to say they can argue that they've gotten better and better and better and better, and they've been right, and they fired their coach. So, like you're talking out of both sides of your mouth there.
Right.
That's true. All right, I enjoyed it.
It's fun.
Yeah. Thank you to Jackson, our producer.
When do you get rid of Bontemps?
As soon as possible. We weren't going to let him in, but it was brutally storming here tonight, and so he dripping wet, and we opened the door.
Corn stalks flying all over the place.
It was very depressing to me. We went and hit golf balls today because we're playing in a golf event tomorrow, and he hadn't played golf in 2 years, and he smacked several of them very far. Very depressing.
Does he have those fancy spikes that you have?
Ironically, he was wearing golf shoes and I wasn't today.
I had nothing. I have no clubs.
Yeah.
I have nothing. So
yeah.
I played golf like 10 times in my life. So
I gave him a glove and let him borrow my clubs. I guess I'll have to give him some balls tomorrow.
Yeah, Kate Bond's got him right now.
All right, that's enough. We'll talk to you later. Thanks for listening to the Hoop Collective.
Adios, amigos.